So my kids love playing laser tag. Actually, my whole family does. We love to play laser tag. We have this set called Laser X. And what you can do is you strap it on, you have like this little monitor on the thing, and you run around the house and you try and shoot each other. We play on teams. We fight to see who has to do the dishes, those kind of things. So we were playing Laser X the other day. We were running around our house, dodging behind the couch and the counter. We're trying to do all those things. But then one of the guns, the Laser X guns, it started to die. It needed new batteries. So I took the gun and I went to the junk drawer in the kitchen. Now I know we all have a junk drawer in our kitchen. And I opened it up so I could get new batteries. So as I'm opening it up, I find the new batteries, and then I have to find something. This Laser X, it has this little screw on it. This little screw that you have to undo so you can get to the batteries. And of course, there's not a screwdriver in the junk drawer. They're in the garage with the rest of the tools. So then I am obviously too lazy to go to the garage, evidently. And so then I have to find something in that junk drawer to go ahead and open up that screw. So as I'm looking, I find one of our extra mailbox keys. So I take that key and it's got this little slot on it. And so I start using it to unscrew the screw so I can replace the batteries. Done. It was easy peasy. Threw the mailbox key back in the drawer and we could continue our game. Sometimes I think life is like that, where we're like the mailbox key and we're being used for something that is not our purpose. We're living our lives doing something that is not our purpose. The mailbox key's purpose is to open the mailbox, and a screwdriver's purpose is to unscrew the screwdriver. Sometimes I think this is like us in our lives. We can do something, but maybe it's not our purpose. Do you ever feel like that? There have been so many times in my life when I feel like a mailbox key that's being used as a screwdriver. Times when I thought I could do something, or I wanted to do something, or I was passionate about doing something that brought me joy or excitement, but then I was not doing that. There's times when there was a disconnect. I think this happens in our lives. And in our series here, our New Year, I want to ask the question today is, how do we find our purpose? How do we find our purpose in this new year? Well, author Frederick Buechner, he writes this famous quote, and I think it really speaks to this. It says, "The place where God calls you is the place where your deepest gladness and the world's deepest hunger meet." And I agree with this sentiment. Where your deepest gladness and the world's hunger meet, that is where you find your purpose. Or Pastor Danielle Strickland puts it this way. She says, "Humility is when you and God agree about who you are." For years in my life, I thought about speaking or preaching, like years of working in the church. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's too scary. It's too terrifying. You say something out there and you might offend somebody. You say something out there and they might not like what you have to say. And so I always worked sort of behind the scenes, even though I felt this little pull of, maybe you could do that. Maybe you could do that. And I honestly, if I'm really honest, I tried to pray it away. This little calling I felt to be able to speak in front of people. I tried to kind of push it away. But then as I started to let it go and try it out, I found that there was something in me where I could release what I wanted to do and let God use me as the medium for what God wanted to say. This kind of vessel. The only way I can best describe it is, you know how like NASCAR racers, they always say that as they're going 200 miles an hour, everything else just sort of slows down around them and they feel like they're actually able to see everything out there. That is kind of sort of sometimes what happens when I'm preaching. So I started to sit there and wonder what God was doing in those moments. When my son Chase was really little, we used to call him the tinkerer, because he would get a toy and he'd be so excited about it, but he wouldn't play with his toy. He'd have to flip it over and take it apart to figure out how this toy worked. He wouldn't even race a remote control car without first unscrewing it and figuring out how that remote control worked. He is a tinkerer. There was one time when he was in junior high when he took a battery and a piece of balsa wood and a couple of Lego wheels and then a piece of a cassette recorder tape that he had taken apart. And he was like, "Mom, I think I made a car that works." And as soon as he puts the battery in, the car went backwards. He said, "Oh, I can fix that." And he went and he turned it around. He's wired this way, and now he's a computer network engineer. He spends his life tinkering and figuring out how stuff works. When my Oma, she's gone now, she lived to be almost 102 years old. But when she was 98, she said, Angie, I still need purpose. So she looked at what she had, her greatest gladness, and the world's biggest need, and what people needed. And what she discovered in the senior living apartment area that she lived in is that people weren't ever touched. Like, people didn't get hugs that often, that they needed some physical touch. And so she looked at her arthritic, gnarled hands, and she decided what she would do is give people shoulder massages after meals. They got so popular that people would actually write their name on a list because she could only give 2 or 3 a day because her hands would ache after that. Here's what I know for sure. God has gifted you in some way. God has put something in how you're wired. And I think the trick of life is to figure out how that wiring, that thing, can help the world. The Bible puts it in this way in the book of Ephesians, for we are God's workmanship. We are God's craft, created in Jesus for good works that God has showed us beforehand that we should do. You have been created for a purpose. You have purpose in this life, no matter what is going on. It's up to us to sort of figure out where God's leading us to use that purpose. But I think in our culture, we kind of get it wrong in a couple of ways. In our culture, first of all, we sometimes think that purpose is inward. Our ego likes to create a purpose that is just for us. It's kind of like a hoarded purpose. We're going to use our gifts to benefit ourselves. We're going to use what we're good at, and we're going to monetize it, and then that's going to earn ourselves. We teach kids this as they're growing up. We say, all right, after high school, you got to go and get a good job because you got to make money, as if money is the end goal of all of it. You see, when our purpose is inward, what we're missing is that world's deepest need. We're all created to go out and do something for others. We miss, when it's inward, we miss what God actually has designed us for and what God has in mind for us. And the second thing, too, that I think we get wrong in our culture is that I think often we think that purpose, it has to be this really big thing. This huge thing. Like, we have to have a bunch of Instagram followers, or we have to donate millions to charity, or we have to have this huge following or go start a nonprofit, that it has to be this really big, huge thing. But here's the truth. Being human is enough. Making a difference in one person's life, that's purpose. That's enough. As a pastor, I've buried people who had millions of dollars and followers. They seemed to have it all, but they didn't feel like they lived their life purpose. I've also buried people who spent their life loving their partner, and they felt like it was whole and beautiful and full. You see, we have purpose. God's given us a purpose, and it doesn't have to be this really big thing. It can be whatever little thing you're working on. The Bible puts it this way. I love it. It says, by the grace given me, I say to each and every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith that God has distributed to each of you. For each of us has one body with many members, but these members, they don't all have the same function. So in Christ, though many, we have one body, and each member belongs to all the others. But we have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy with all your faith. If your gift is serving, then serve. If it's teaching, then teach. If it's encouraging, then encourage. If it's giving, then give generously. If it's to lead, then do it diligently. If it's to show mercy, then do it cheerfully. So my friends, where can your deep gladness meet the world's needs this year? How can you use what God has given you, whether it's an ability to tinker, ability to speak, ability to hug, or a massage with some gnarled hands? What can you do for others this year? What are you good at, and what does the world need? Let's find our purpose.